Good morning, everybody. Valley 5 Real Estate Podcast. We're live here locally at 500 North Higgins downtown, and we got Jed Diehl with Inspect Montana, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about what he sees and get some inside knowledge that he does with home inspections, and kind of pick his brain with everything. And yeah, looking forward to it.
Welcome to the podcast, Jed.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Take two.
Yeah.
Just to let everybody know, we did this a couple weeks ago, and yours truly didn't have the microphone set correctly to record. So we're back for round two. Jed has been very gracious to come back in.
As many times as it takes, I'll be here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we wanted to have a home inspector on the podcast because it's such a it can be one of those things that people have a lot of anxiety about. Whether we recommend to our sellers to have a home inspection done before they list, or we're representing the buy side and they have a home inspector, we go through the house and have you do what you do, work your magic, and then provide a report. And everybody's chewing their fingernails off until they get that report. But maybe, first of all, explain Inspect Montana, how you got into, doing home inspections, and then we'll kind of get into the actual application of what you do in different scenarios and that kind of thing. But
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Inspect Montana has been around since 2001, which was well before I was involved in it. But Tim Netzley, if you've met him, he's the founder of the company, and then he hired his first employee, another inspector, about 6 years ago, and then I was the second one after that about 5 years ago. And we're full service home inspection and commercial inspection company. We started out early on there's so much, I guess, market driven expectation for home inspection companies to become a one-stop shop, and so we've really worked hard to be that in terms of providing a great home inspection, but then all of the ancillary testing services and environmental services that come along with that. But we've since kind of evolved to where we felt like that was taking too much attention away for our inspectors, so we started a sister company in Safe Home Environmental, and they now carry their own certifications and are just really rocking and rolling on that.
So they're doing like the radon and the meth and the
Exactly.
that type of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Asbestos testing, lead-based paint, methamphetamine clearance testing. I mean, the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
So, but yeah, we have really just strived not only to provide a really great service, but we really take pride in the people that we bring in on our team and give the right people the right opportunities and a good opportunity. And we've always aimed to elevate the industry here, not just locally in the Missoula and Bitterroot Valley, but kind of statewide. And as you know, I know you, Roger, you're quite familiar with the home inspection industry as well, and the barrier to entry can be quite low for home inspectors, and so we've really faced that directly and said that's not the standard that we want to create.
Right.
And so we have some pretty involved in-house training and in-house apprenticeships that we put all of our guys through before they're ever out on their own doing their thing. So
It's such a smart thing to do that because there's so much liability involved too with home inspections. I came from Washington State where I had my own home inspection company as well, and after thousands of home inspections, you feel good doing the home inspection.
Oh, yeah.
But when you go to hire somebody, you're like, oh no. That's when it dawns on you that there's so much stuff that they need to know, and the training that you took, the 40 hours or 60 hours, whatever it is. Well, which until just recently, Montana, there wasn't a test, or there wasn't a certification process until 2026, right?
Yep, and even still, it's a bit misleading because it's called I think they're calling it a certification or a license or whatever they're calling it through the state, but even still, it's more, show us the proof that you passed that other course,
Right.
and that you have insurance, and then, here's your name on a list. And so while that's a step in the right direction, it can be a little misleading to clients and agents like you who are looking for people who are on that state list and making the assumption that, well, that provides some kind of minimum standard of expectation that I can have, when in reality it's more just, proof that you're a legitimate business.
Yeah.
And standards are more, we're holding ourselves accountable to our standards as inspectors.
Yep. And so you guys are affiliated with Internachi, right?
Yep.
International
Yep. All of our guys
Association
are
of Certified Home Inspectors.
exactly.
Okay.
And any inspector you work with is either going to be Internachi or ASHI. These days are kind of the two main ones. In fact, I'm not even aware of other organizations that they might be out there, but
those are the standard.
yeah. And there's, I wouldn't go into that with any preference, one or the other. I can speak very highly of Internachi just based off of my experience, but if you're an outsider looking in, it's kind of like asking where somebody went to college, and it's more how did they apply themselves, not where they went.
Right.
So
Right. We just had that conversation.
Yeah.
A quick aside, when my wife and I started having kids, we're like, okay, colleges. Like you just, as a parent, you're trying to think ahead, and we came across a study that was done at Harvard, actually.
oh yeah.
And it said that if someone were to get accepted into an Ivy League school and then didn't go, but they ended up going to a state school instead, their lifetime earnings were within 1% of each other.
Oh, is that right?
It has nothing to do with the institution as much as it does the person who's going to the institution. So yes, there's some nepotism in the top 1%, like you can get up into the stratosphere with the Bill Gateses and that kind of stuff. But when you take the mean, it's just there's no different. It's the person.
Yep.
So
exactly.
I agree with that.
And
wholeheartedly.
that's how we've kind of looked at our hiring too. Is it through the Internachi courses, and then of course our in-house apprenticeship, and we feel we can teach almost anybody how to perform a really high quality home inspection, but it's those the things we can't teach on, character traits, a certain demeanor that we look for in our inspectors.
Communication.
Communication skills, a certain bedside manner, so to speak, and how you talk about things. Those are kind of the critical characteristics we look for in people, and then we can take that right individual and we can train them on how to see houses.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on.
And that's probably so important, to find somebody that can communicate effectively to the client.
Yeah.
Because there is so much information, so much detail that you guys are going in and looking at.
Yep.
For most buyers, they don't really have a clue of what's going on.
Yep.
So you almost have to, you have to have all the, the greater knowledge on everything, but then you almost have to be able to put it in layman's terms to present it to them.
Yep.
So they can hopefully understand what's going on.
Yep. Yeah, you're a translator.
Yeah.
You're taking the contractor lingo and you're boiling it down to things that the client can not only understand, but something that they can take action on. They can understand it so well that they can take action on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, let's jump in. I got some good questions.
Yeah.
All right, so what are some of the more absurd, bizarre, crazy things you've found in attics and or crawl spaces?
Those are always the place where you find those crazy things, it seems. And we always get the phone call from agents ahead of time, which is, pretty clean house. I don't think you'll find anything. It's like, well, you haven't been in the attic or the crawl space yet. So craziest thing from a crawl space perspective was actually I think I've mentioned it to you guys before, but it was a commercial inspection of a restaurant, and I won't name the name, of course, but it was immediately when we went in, there was just kind of a smell in the air, and not a good one, not the one you want to get hit with when you walk into a restaurant, but and something that the employees complained of quite a bit while we were there. We've always had this smell. We have no idea where it comes from. Well, it turns out that the entire square footage of that, single level restaurant had a crawl space about 3 feet deep. And all it took was cracking open that crawl space access to see that about half of that had been filled with sewage.
Ooh.
And the full square, from what we could tell, there was the full square footage of that, maybe 1,500 to 2,000 square foot restaurant. So that's not something that happens over a weekend. That's years and years of a broken a broken drain line. I think it was a broken cast iron drain line.
Of course.
That was, of course. And, that had just been discharging into that crawl space year after year after year.
Wow.
So that wasn't only, wastewater from kitchens, but, from the public restrooms and, all the bad stuff.
Yeah.
So that was...
You just light a match and...
I mean, that particular restaurant, I think, was pretty immediately took a break from service.
Yeah.
And I haven't checked in to see what happened since, but
Yeah.
that was probably the most, just
Bizarre.
immediately shocking
Yeah.
one. We've run into plenty of, broken drain lines or disconnected drain lines,
Sure.
but the scale at which that one was
Yeah.
taking place was pretty alarming. And then shocking stuff, one in an attic actually that I remember in, I think it was in Summers, but just the north side of Flathead there, and they were having a really bad windstorm, and I think the house was just at the right angle, and a part of their ridge cap had come loose, or maybe it wasn't secured properly in the first place, but they had some high wind, so but that part of the ridge cap had come loose, and once I got into the attic for that portion of the inspection, there was a good 6 inches of snow throughout about half of the crawl space, or half of the attic space, on top of the loose fill. So we actually have a pretty good video of that on our social media. It's but yeah, so you'll if the wind is just right and the maybe the holes in that ridge vent are a little too big, you might get a little bit of that kind of fine mist of snow coming in, and 9 times out of 10 that just dries out and it's kind of a non-issue. But this was, as soon as that melts, they were going to have a problem. So.
Wow. And this was for a home that was for sale?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. So the sellers obviously...
Oh, they had no idea. And which tells me it was probably, it was so much snow in there, it was almost certainly a very recent development, in terms of that ridge having come loose. And 6 inches of snow was...
That's a lot.
In the attic?
In the attic was pretty shocking. Yeah, for sure. I was making snowballs up there. It was bad.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's very important that people are, at least going and looking in the crawl spaces and attic.
Periodically. Don't be a stranger to your crawl space or attic. I know some of the older houses. You don't have too much of a choice. You got 6 inches between the joist and the dirt, and there's not a whole lot you can do unless you've got a crawler bot or something.
Yeah.
But it's those spaces are so critical. That's where we as inspectors find the most stuff, because it's been out of sight, out of mind, and neglected, for so long. So
Lots of nesting, lots of critter stuff, lots of, definitely.
and it's always the stuff that seems to, hold up, negotiations or create some of the more major issues when it comes to these real estate transactions. A major mold issue is like, pump the brakes. We gotta get this figured out before we're gonna want to close on it.
Which is correct.
Right.
They should do that. And what's funny, when you're representing the buy side and you have a home inspector and they find mold, I bet you it's 90% of the time the buyer tells me, oh, I have a very sensitive allergy to mold.
Right,
And I'm
yeah.
like, everybody
I have-
has a sensitive allergy.
I have a
It's
very
like,
rare condition that
it's like, we're gonna get it taken care of, trust me.
Yeah.
But it's like, people hear the word mold
Yes.
and they absolutely flip out. And
Yep.
we want them to be concerned.
Right.
No doubt about it, but it's solvable.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
the thing.
Yes.
Those conditions are addressable. It's just, what do we need to do to get rid of the mold, abate it, and then ensure we know where the water was coming from that started that mold growth in
Exactly.
the first place,
Exactly.
that we're not just masking or putting a Band-Aid on that problem, because I've seen it plenty of times where people go in and, or when you go into an attic and all the sheathing is painted white.
Right.
You're like,
Yep.
what, it was either a fire or there was mold.
Yep.
It's one of the
Yep.
two. So you're up there and you're going, okay, well, what happened? And they're like, well, I don't know. When I bought it, the home inspector didn't say anything. It's like, okay, well, something happened
Yeah.
up here. Now
Yep.
you're trying to figure out, and it's like, okay, well, if it's, an 80-year-old house, it might have been a leaky roof, and, but you're still trying to figure it out as a
Yep.
home inspector.
Yep.
You're trying to put the pieces together, and it's not always easy to do.
Right.
It is easier now with thermal imagers and stuff like that, where you can chase water leaks a lot easier. But if it's
Sure.
the middle of summer when you're doing this inspection and it hasn't rained in a month,
Yep.
you're like, I don't know. So how do you navigate that, or how do you put that on your report, and how do you communicate to your clients that this is and or was an issue,
Right.
but how do you come to your conclusion about, was it mold, or was it or was it just lack of draft, and it got stained, and it wasn't
Right.
mold, but it's just staining.
Yeah.
Because some inspectors, I'll hear, there's mold. I'm like, that's not mold. That's there's the soffit vents are blocked. There's no soffit baffle in the or
Right.
like that kind of thing. So
Yep.
just kind of walk us through when you see an area of concern,
Yep.
and then how you determine what you think it is.
Yeah. Well, I guess, a recent inspection might be a good example of that. It was a crawl space that had a significant mold problem pretty much throughout. And so it was showing up on the joists and on the subfloor. And I mean, some corners were like it was like a type you had never seen before. Like it maybe needed to be studied, bring somebody in. But what you do as an inspector is you use your experience on how these things tend to come about. So exactly what you're saying is mold doesn't just grow because it wants to. It grows because there's moisture coming from somewhere, and it's coming in persistently enough and staying wet for long enough to where that growth is being allowed to take place. So there's no such thing as a mold issue that doesn't have a moisture issue accompanying it. So you have to be looking at things through that sort of narrative lens as a home inspector of, okay, I've got this problem. My clients are going to have questions about, okay, you found mold, where did it come from, why is it there? And you need to anticipate that and be able to come up with your best assumptions based on your professional experience. And that kind of goes, I've talked to some agents during classes that I teach, and it's like, we just want the facts, we never want your opinion. And it's like, no, you're paying for my professional opinion. And I can see where that, I can see why that's a popular saying, but I don't think that that's actually what people want in their real life interactions with inspectors.
You're not working for the agent.
No.
You're working for the client, and the client wants all of your opinions.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. So, with that particular crawl space, you started with, okay, well, where's the moisture coming from? What's our moisture problem? And so many times when it comes to crawl spaces, it's outside of the envelope of the house. And so you're outside and you're looking at grading of the soil. All houses, inspectors really want your house to be like up on a hill, like, with a moat surrounding it or something. But it's, even the building code calls for a specific amount of slope. I think it's 6 inches in the first 10 feet away from the foundation. So we're wanting to be able to kneel down next to the foundation and visually see a slope away. And if it's flat or negative, we're going to make a comment on that. The next, and that goes for all your flat surfaces too, because that especially your flat surfaces, like your walkways and your patios, because those aren't going to have the soil to soak it up. When it rains, everything's going to go back towards the foundation.
Yeah, if you have the footprint of the house and you have a negative slope toward the foundation, you may think, oh, well, when it rains, the ground is going to absorb that. That's true, but when it snows and the snow sloughs off the house and then sits there and melts backwards into your crawls, that's where you can have some serious problems.
Gutters and downspouts would kind of be the second thing. I mean, I don't think any agent has, agent with any type of experience has, seen a report that doesn't either call out soil grading or a gutter or downspout issue. But nonetheless, just because things are common in reports doesn't mean that they should be ignored or that they're not important. So, all downspouts, first off, full gutter system on every house. The only maybe exception is you've got these crazy 10-foot eaves or something, on a house where it's really getting the water out and away. And then all of your downspouts should have extensions on them that, get the water out 5 to 6 feet away from the foundation as well. And in my opinion, a gutter system that has no downspout extensions is worse than a house that just doesn't have gutters at all.
For sure.
Right? Because you're taking all of that roof drainage and you're concentrating it in one corner of the foundation. And you combine that with maybe some poor grading. It's when I'm on the outside of the house, I'm going to find water in the crawl space right here. You know what I mean?
Or at least efflorescence around the base of the foundation wall or something like that.
There's going to be some evidence of some kind of intrusion right here.
So back to this house that had crazy mold.
And so so the exterior moisture management was a contributing factor. But then it's like, okay, well, crawl space, there's a lot of crawl spaces that get damp. Not all of them have mold issues. So why is this one not drying out, right? So, well, there was no ventilation. So it was an older house that, ideally would have had, a certain amount of perimeter vents to bring in outdoor air to manage that humidity and dry things out even if they got damp, and it just didn't exist. And
so was there ground moisture? Was the moisture barrier down?
There was no vapor barrier.
Okay.
Right. So another component. Right.
Okay.
So there was no insulation installed. There was no vapor barrier installed. There was no ventilation installed, and then you also had an exterior moisture management issue. And so all of that, from an inspection report, every individual one of those items gets their own little spot in the report. But why I think walkthroughs are so critical is it gives the inspector the opportunity to package all of that up in a narrative understanding for the client to say, all of these things are connected to the problem that I'm seeing.
Which gives that person an opportunity to reach out to someone for a solution.
Yes.
Yeah.
If
you just say there's mold in the crawl space,
right,
and that's all the agent wants you to say,
it's
like
stop
there's
there.
so many questions. It sounds like in that specific situation there also could have been condensation moisture as well forming because of the heat inside and the coolness outside, and then that's why we want that draft. But that also brings up a great question. A lot of clients in colder climates will block their crawl space vents in the winter because they think that it's making the house cold. Do you agree that that's a good thing to do? And if yes or no, and when would be an appropriate time to do that if you were going to do that?
Yeah, I think in Montana's climate specifically, we're a cold climate, but we're relatively a dry climate. So even in the winter, when the snow's falling, humidity levels are, relative to other parts of the country are fairly low. So yeah, some crawl spaces have those seasonal vents that you can open and close, and I would say in certain parts of the country, you maybe would benefit from the recommendation of certain times of year. Those are open, sometimes they're closed. in our particular climate in Montana, I would just leave them open all the time. If that's your crawl space design, if it's designed as a vented crawl space, just leave them open. And I feel less and less on new construction. I'm actually seeing seasonal vents, and I'm just seeing permanent open vents more and more. And I prefer that. The other thing to think about with those crawl spaces is the insulation design goes hand in hand with your ventilation design. And so it's in a vented crawl space where you have exterior vents bringing outdoor air in, your underfloor should be insulated. But I see it all the time, especially on newer construction where they've flip-flopped it and they've got exterior vents, but the foundation wall perimeter is what they insulated. And so, you're still getting that drying effect of the outdoor air, but you're losing the energy efficiency effect because you've effectively incorporated the crawl space into the thermal envelope of the house, and then you poked a bunch of holes in it. You
would think you would still be susceptible to condensation forming on the bottom side of the floor.
And that can be the case as well. And back to mold and having a working understanding of how things form. One of the big problems in our area with new construction is actually the tendency to go for a sealed and conditioned crawl space design. And that's fantastic from an energy efficiency standpoint once everything's finished. But the problem here is that you may be building in damp conditions during the winter, during rainstorms. That foundation gets poured and that floor structure gets put on and sealed. Well, that vapor barrier isn't installed yet. The insulation's not installed yet, and the HVAC isn't going to be operational for months.
Which is what we saw at your buddy's
place. Not operational for months down the road.
Yep.
And so you have no moisture control in this sealed tight crawl space for months during the construction process.
You're also reliant upon a mechanical fan or something pulling moisture out, aren't you?
Right. Well, if they go with that design, because a sealed and conditioned crawl space at its most basic level is vapor barrier on the floor, insulated perimeter and rim joist, and then you've got registers or holes poked in the ductwork.
You're heating your crawl space.
You're heating it, and then you're going to have a transfer grill that kind of transfers air between the crawl space and the livable space as well.
Gotcha.
But you can opt for that, or you can go with an exhausting design where you're not actually bringing any conditioned air in, but you're just constantly pumping the humid air out of the crawl space. Yeah, it's on a humidistat or just constantly running. All that to say, we're seeing a lot of new construction with pretty significant mold issues in the crawl spaces because of that. It's a timeline issue during construction. It's not being built wrong. It's just the timeline is sponsoring mold growth before there's any of the control factors in place.
Right.
And so, but you have to have a working knowledge of that, because as an inspector, if you just said there's mold in your new construction crawl space, I mean, there's a million questions coming to mind for like, how is that possible? How does this happen? And so being able to explain it in a way of, here's why it likely developed because of the timeline. I don't see today any active moisture issues. So what you need to do is have it remediated. And then assuming all else is well, it shouldn't come back. But it's a monitor situation from there versus the last example is long-term moisture effects having an impact, and now, with no management, and now you have to manage it and monitor it, versus new construction, treat it, monitor it. If everything else is right, it shouldn't be an issue for you moving forward.
It seems like such a risk. Like, I get it in the name of efficiency long-term, but crawl space vents are so easy. You don't have to do anything. They just work. Mother Nature does her job, and it's like.
I think the same argument could be made for attic spaces too. I mean, a vented attic is just sort of a perfect system. I mean, and to, well, we want to put our, furnace up there, and we want to spray foam the roof deck and make it sealed and conditioned, and boy, just all the things that can go wrong if that's not done exactly the way that it, needs to be done, versus these more or less perfect systems that, you just introduce the outdoor air, it naturally dries, we live in a dry climate, and if I'm building my house, I'm going for the healthy home design, in my opinion, and I'm doing a vented crawl space and a vented attic, personally.
Do you notice homes around here? I know in Washington State in the late 50s and 60s, they didn't put insulation underneath, but they had like shiplap flooring, like diagonal shiplap flooring, and they figured that there was an R value to
the lumber.
To the lumber.
Yeah.
Do you come across stuff like that? And then what's your recommendation? Just to go ahead and hang some insulation, or?
Yeah, no, it's certainly come across older crawl spaces that have no insulation to speak of.
But they weren't. They were built without it on purpose, though. It wasn't like it was like the builder missed it, or
sure. Exactly. And nonetheless, the recommendation is to install it. Is to add it, and that kind of comes to this bigger discussion between agents and inspectors sometimes is, well, if that was the building standard back then and it's an old house, then you shouldn't make any comments about it. It's like, well, these standards change for a reason, right? It's because our understanding of building science changes, our best practice changes, because we've seen where things go wrong and we've improved upon them.
Should we not say anything about ungrounded wiring?
Or knob and tube was code at one point. Should
when
I
is it
not
okay
mention?
for me to say something?
So it's more, it's more, are things functional? Are things safe? Are things healthy? And if things can be done to improve that, I'm going to make that recommendation regardless of how old the house is.
Awesome. Okay, so that brings me to another question.
Yep.
Suppose, there's an open house and, buyer walks through, loves the house, puts an offer down, gets it accepted, and they're talking to you, hey, I want to hire you. Beautiful house, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
What are some things that buyers, even though they've been to the house, they've walked through it, they see it, but they just overlook the 900-pound elephant in the room? When you walk in, you're like, wait a minute. What are some of those things that you can help us educate our buy-side clients and the sellers so that they can maybe address that stuff prior?
Yeah, and I know that's tough, because what you're trying to do is teach home buyers how to see things through an inspector's eyes in a lot of ways. And there are some stuff that you can do more easily. Some of the major appliances, recognizing how to tell how old an appliance is, and you don't need to just know that. Inspectors don't just know that. I mean, we can look at an appliance, a furnace, and say, yeah, that's probably beyond its life expectancy, but what we do is we find the data plate on it, and we take a picture of the data plate, and then we check online resources, and we confirm exactly when it was manufactured. And if you're a buyer, you can do the same thing. I mean, those data plates are on the units and available if you want to, and right there. Again, back to moisture management, that's always such a big thing, and you can tell so much about what you might find in a basement or in a crawl space by analyzing what's going on outside of the house. And so, full gutter system with downspouts extended away, proper grading of all of your surfaces away from the house. If you're noticing a lot of, big depressions next to the house, or, significant negative slope, no gutters, downspouts dumping right next to the foundation, and there's moss all over the concrete in that corner. You can, be more prepared anyway of what an inspector might come across in those cases.
Yeah, sometimes I've arrived to a house with a buyer, and my home inspection head like you can't get rid of it. Once you
No,
have it, you
once
can't
you got
get
it,
rid of
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so you pull up to a house and like, oh, this is beautiful. And, you know, I'm looking at the roof and there's a waviness to the roof.
Sure.
And I'm like, there's at least 2 layers, you know,
2
or
layers of
maybe
shingles
3,
up there.
or,
Yep.
you know, or
Yep.
maybe they put metal right on top of shingle and, you know,
Yep.
like, there's a lot of things that I think we see
Yes.
through the home inspector lens that a buyer looks at a house or they see it in pictures or what, and they're just like, oh, this is beautiful, this is perfect. And when you start to peel back the layers,
Yeah.
you know, there's always, like, you've said this a million times to us, and I've lived this experience, but there's no perfect house,
No.
right? So, and that includes brand new homes and, you know, all that, but it just seems like there's other, you know, if a house was converted from coal or oil to modern furnace, and, you know, where every room used to have its own return air and supply, and, well, what's going on with those now?
Yep.
You know, how did the new people,
Yep.
you know, route their ducting, and, or the home where they say all new electrical,
Yeah.
and they have a new panel,
Right.
and it just ties into all the old ungrounded
yep,
stuff.
yep,
You know?
yep.
And it's unfortunate that we come across those types of things, but oftentimes the listing agent doesn't know either.
Right,
You know, their
right.
client tells them, hey, I had an electrician in, we got all new wiring.
Right.
Did you?
Right.
Because that's a
Yeah, to what?
$25,000 job, and you would have had to have drywall work, and this is an old lath and plaster house, and I don't see any wainscoting or any, because you can always tell if somebody's cut the walls open on an old house,
Right.
you know, usually on a new house too, for that matter, because you can't blend the textures
Right.
on the walls. So, but there's things like this that I think, you know, people see a 80-year-old house, like, oh, the wiring's been updated, the plumbing's been updated, hold on,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
we need to get under the hood,
Yeah.
and take a peek a little further.
Yeah, to what extent have those updates
Yeah.
taken place? Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, just in terms of setting expectations for yourself as a buyer, understanding what age of construction you're getting into is helpful. I mean, if you're getting into a house that's over 50 years old, I mean, you should be anticipating some older wiring systems, some older plumbing material. And that's not to say that things aren't functioning just fine and safe today, but we always make notes of, you know, well, you should be aware that you have galvanized water supply pipes, and you've got cast iron drain lines, and you've got these systems that do tend to have a lifespan on them. And so if this is your forever home, you know, if this is a house you're going to be in for a long period of time, here's some future repairs you might be anticipating.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, you know, I would imagine that there's hopefully some conversations happening, you know, between the agent and their client, just on what is likely to be expected on older houses before the inspector's ever involved.
Right.
And then the inspector can come in and give that extra context. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I know that I've been, you know, at a listing appointment, and somebody says, hey, I had new wiring done, and, oh, do you have a receipt? And they hand you the receipt, you know, and it's $3,000.
Right. Yeah, it's like,
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
You had a panel replaced,
Right.
you know, and, you know, which is a good thing. I'm not saying that just replacing the panel isn't a good, that's a huge upgrade.
Right.
You know, it's definitely safer for the house, but, understanding that as a real estate agent, you know, from what we do, because we do a lot of volume, we see this a lot.
Yeah.
So you have certain, I guess, certain things you need to cover with a seller, and anticipate those same things are going to come from the buyer, so that you're ready, you're prepared.
Right.
You know, it's better to be proactive than reactive.
Yep.
In with listing and with buying. Like as a buyer's agent, we want to walk in and say, okay, we know there's some stuff, I can see some stuff that's going to need to be addressed. And then, you know, when they call whoever they're going to call for their home inspection, I will talk to the buyer and say, let me know who it is, I'll give them a call, and then I'll talk to the home inspector too before they even show up, and let them know what I see.
Yep.
And it just gives that person a little bit more comfort when you show up that okay, they know that there's some stuff that's,
Yeah.
like, I'm not just gonna be the bearer of bad news here.
Yeah.
That there's always bad news.
Always.
There's always bad news. So,
Yep.
you know, the agents who don't want that uncovered, you gotta kind of wonder a little bit, like, whose best interest do you have in mind here? You know,
Sure.
like, look, very few homes that I've come across have gone back on the market because there was something that wasn't solvable. You know,
Sure. Yeah.
when a third-party home inspector comes into play and they say, look, there's mold in the crawl space, the seller wants that fixed just as badly as the buyer wants that fixed. And very rarely is there something that's not fixable. I mean, if it's a structural issue in the attic or in the crawl, and it's gonna take, you know, tens of thousands of dollars to address something, okay, yeah, you know, that there could be something there. But, you know, those are so rare, and we want to know those things for our clients
Yes.
anyway.
Yes.
So, but, go
We,
ahead.
well, we always say everything is fixable, it's just a matter of time and money, just like you're saying. But the caveat to that is it's not up to me as the inspector to determine what's worth your time and what's worth your money, right? And so I agree with you that 99% of I don't think I've ever inspected a house where the ultimate, the only decision is to tear it down. You know what I mean?
Right.
Everything is manageable, but it's just your comfort level as my client on what you feel comfortable with dealing with and what you don't. And if you ultimately come to the conclusion that now that I know, I'm not comfortable with what we're doing and I would like to back out, fantastic. The inspection did its job. You know what I mean? And so I think too often we can tie the success of a home inspection to the outcome of the deal. And I just don't think that's appropriate. Sometimes the best decision is backing away.
Yeah.
For sure. Now, with Inspect Montana's unique approach, having an environmental side and a home inspection side, is there a methodology to which tests get done first to ensure that the client doesn't overpay for a service that another one is going to find as a deal breaker? You know, like, so, you see, if the home inspection is going to cost $750 and the meth test is going to cost $250, do we do the meth test first to make sure that there's nothing there and then we do the home inspection, or is it just, hey, whenever we're free and available to get in, that's when we kind of do it? And
yeah, and so that it can get a little tricky. One instance that comes to mind would be mold air sampling, for example. And so obviously all of our inspectors are looking for visual signs of mold as we're doing our inspection. And it's not like, oh, you didn't order the air sampling, so I'm just going to cover my eyes and it doesn't exist. But that wouldn't necessarily. I wouldn't necessarily go through my home inspection, not find anything visible, and then say, yep, cancel your air samples because there's nothing here and I guarantee it. Because the nice thing about air samples is that they can capture spores that are in the air that are coming from locations that we might not necessarily be able to put eyes on as inspectors. And so for the most part, I would say, when it comes to methamphetamine testing, there's really no good visual that I can make as an inspector that would say, yeah, you should do it, or no, I'm not worried about it. I think any house has the potential for it, aside for maybe brand new construction, unless you got concerns about the contractors or something, But in other instances, like, if people are ordering lead-based paint because they think they need it, but, we know that it doesn't quite add up from an age of construction, we're gonna have that conversation about, hey, you probably don't need the service. Or for sewer scopes, for example, we'll, if they order a sewer scope but I show up to the house and they're on a Missoula step system, then, that it's like, okay, I can perform the sewer scope, but it's going to be from the clean out in the crawl space about 3 feet and then the tank. So I can do it, it's never to say that there couldn't be an issue in that 3 feet, but I want to make sure that you know what you're paying for in this circumstance.
Yeah.
And that for septic systems, you understand that my sewer scope isn't a tank inspection.
Right.
I'm not pumping out the septic tank. I'm not performing a tank inspection. It's the line from the house to the tank that I'm looking at,
Which
right?
can still be beneficial.
Absolutely.
You can still find things that are wrong, in that short run.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so it is about taking off the salesmanship hat. I think we were talking about this earlier and going like, what is, and that's what we try to not do is we're not trying to upsell anybody on these additional services, but the longer you're in this industry, the more you know, the more I know that I would never buy a house, old or new, without a sewer scope,
Right.
just because I've seen what I've seen,
Yep.
right? And so if you're doing it right, it's an attempt at protecting your client because you have experience and you know what can be the case.
Yeah.
And if it turns out to be fine, fantastic. But you're not going to be too happy with your inspector if they could have performed a service for you, and then it ended up being an issue down the road.
Yeah. I mean, and that 2 to 5% of the time where you actually find something, could be more, could be less. Those are significant cost items.
Yeah.
When you find them,
Yep.
or they can be anyway. Especially if you have older drain lines, if you're running on terracotta or old concrete,
Yep.
sewer lines where they're offset or there's a belly in them or root intrusion or,
Yep.
Something like that can add up,
Yep.
and it may look like, oh, we just need to clear the roots out, and somebody goes to clear the roots out with a hydrojet and they crack the plumbing.
It gets
Now you're
worse.
digging
Yeah.
it up. Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
it just exacerbates the issue. So, I mean, those things can definitely open up Pandora's box, and
Sure.
for the cost of it's cheap peace of mind in
Yep.
the long run.
Yeah. We always think about our fees in terms of everything. It so often pays for itself. I mean, if I even with just a basic home inspection, if I show up and determine that your 300 square foot balcony needs to be replaced because the joists are rotten and the ledger's rotten and it wasn't, it was mounted onto the siding and, it was just nailed, everything's wrong. That cost that you might get back in negotiations for that deck replacement is 20 times more than what you paid for me to find it, and so I mean, I don't know that an inspection goes by where I don't find more issues from a cost perspective
Right.
than what the inspection fee ended
Right.
up being.
Right. And just before we started filming, on the flip side of that,
Yeah.
you go into a house and everything just looks great. There's a couple of nickel and dime things here or there or whatever. Your client still has that baseline understanding of what that house, what the conditions were, everything when they moved in.
Yep.
So when they go to move out, if there was something that they didn't, that in the crawl space, something new developed, it doesn't look like they neglected the house. It looks like, oh, that was actually okay 3 years ago, so something happened within that last 3 years that, so it definitely gives peace of mind, and it gives you a document that you can reference. If your water heater, breaks and you have to call a plumber, you can say, well, I've got this kind of water heater right now,
Yep.
Here's a picture of it, or I can send you the report,
Yep.
whatever, this is the type of plumbing we have, and it's just a great reference document, or like Chad said several times, it's like, where your water shut off is.
Yep.
And if you don't, you should.
Yeah.
Before you have that babysitter watch your kids, you should definitely show them where the gas shut off is, where the water shut. It's just a great document that you can have to refer back to, and you should.
Yes.
But that brings me to another question. As a homeowner, what are, if you have a homeowner walk around their house once a month, once every couple of weeks, just have your morning coffee, walk around your house, and just look, what can they look for that would help them be proactive in a situation versus maybe uh-oh, now it's presenting inside the house, or there's something going on?
Yeah, I mean, always look for changing conditions. You're going to be the one with the most intimate relationship with your house on seeing it, day to day, right? And so we'll do those 11-month warranty inspections, and oftentimes I ask them to create a list of issues that they've been having before I'm on site, and then they show me on site, and it's always like the tiniest little details that like nobody except the homeowner is ever going to notice. It's a little scratch in the corner of the countertop here. It's all these tiny things that won't necessarily be, a conversation you can have with the builder, but so changing conditions is always something to keep in mind. Things that seem to work really well, but are now all of a sudden you're having issues with. So more major stuff is, new construction. If you start to see, really jagged cracking in the drywall, above doors and windows, a little bit of settlement can be considered typical, but if things are constantly changing, if that crack is getting longer and longer, if it's getting wider and wider as you're watching it, that may be a cause for concern from structural movement perspective. If all of a sudden your doors and windows were operating very smoothly and now they're all getting really jammed up and you can hardly close any of them, little things to pay attention to. Efficiency with your appliances, if water pressure all of a sudden drops significantly or on a well system and that wasn't the case before, so it's a lot of changing conditions as in terms of how it's been and how you've observed it over time is everything's worth paying attention to.
I know, over in Washington, Seattle area, it rains a lot.
Yeah.
Right, and the envelope of the house is hypercritical, right?
Yeah.
So, I used to tell people, look, you may not know construction, but you're gonna know when something's out of place.
Yeah.
If you see branches on your roof, get them off the roof.
Yeah.
If you see a shingle that's flipped over backwards, it's gonna catch your eye,
Right.
I promise you.
Right.
You're gonna see something.
Yep.
So, you may not think that you're qualified to walk around your house and look for things that are wrong, but I promise you're gonna see a gutter that's hanging off the house. You're gonna see a downspout that's disconnected from the gutter. You're gonna see branches that are hitting the house. You're gonna see things that are like, oh, that's how a raccoon, or a squirrel, or like, you will know. I promise you'll know if you just walk around your house. And it's better to do that proactively for the longevity of your home, because if you wake up one morning and you see a water spot on your drywall ceiling, and you go outside and there's a big branch on your roof, you're like, oh, yeah, I probably could have seen that if I would have taken the time to walk around the house, because branches fall when you're not at home.
Right.
You could be at work and something could hit your roof, and a window breaks to a root cellar that you're, and something happens, and it's like, just walk around your house, be part of your investment. It'll pay dividends.
Yeah, and any signs of moisture intrusion are a big one, obviously, whether it's coming from a roof leak or, we've called out, plumbing leaks that are presenting very early when we do thermographic imaging. And just, not that every homeowner needs to go out and buy a thermal camera, but
they're cheap
they're cheap enough to where you could, and you might catch something. But yeah, those changing conditions, trusting yourself to recognize when things don't seem right. Back to the rain. We get enough rain around here. When it rains, go walk around your house on the outside as it's raining. Watch how water is behaving on the structure. Where it's draining to. How does it shed? Are there really high impact areas that are getting just bombarded, or does the amount of rain seem to be correlating with what's coming out your downspouts, or does it suggest that there's a clog
Yeah.
somewhere?
Is the kick-out flashing working?
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
is it being overrun?
Yep.
You know, or
Yep.
whatever. I mean, your step flashing, is it, you know, I mean, is the siding touching the third layer of roofing?
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
did they
yeah.
not trim back
Yep.
you know, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that we see, but I can't encourage people enough to walk around their own home
Yes.
and pay attention.
Yep.
You know, because usually where there's, you know, it's almost fun. It's like you're trying to solve a puzzle, you know, and, you know, you see bird droppings on the side of your house and it's coming out of a soffit vent.
Right.
You're like, I see that 1 out of 5 houses that I go to, you know, you're like, oh, you got birds in the attic, or, you know, how do you know? Well, there's a big white stripe running down the
Right.
side, and
Yep.
you're like, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that? You know, like, you just have to keep walking around your house and look,
Yep.
you know, and it's simple things like that, but that could end up costing, because it could create a situation where draft isn't getting through the soffit now because there's a nest. Then you get black staining on your sheathing, and
Yep.
you know, and if birds can get in there, bees can get in there, other critters and pests and
Yep.
you know, that type of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we, you know, one thing I see quite a bit with newer construction too is while they're during the painting process, they're painting right over vent openings for bathroom fans or the dryer vents,
Yep.
and those gate flaps are getting painted shut. And so, you know, one of the first things that I do when I show up to a house is I do my exterior inspection first, but I go into the house and I turn on all of the fans on first thing, so that when I'm walking around, I can confirm that we have airflow and that there's one termination per fan. That's all they're all accounted for. But I see that all the time where they're you know, fans are on full bore and they're just stuck in place because they got painted shut. And so, you know, and again, back to the changing conditions, you know, we run this fan all the time when we're taking steamy showers, but it's just not, you know, it's not taking care of the humidity or the steam. I don't really know what's going on. I'll go, you know, walk around the house. You might have caught that 5 years ago instead of now me catching it today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Definitely. And that's it could be a dangerous situation with a clothes dryer. You know, it could overheat something and you know, create a hot spot. So we definitely want those things, you know, checked out. But typically that's in new construction, right? Because an existing homeowner would most likely know if their dryer wasn't drying clothes, and you know,
the dryer tends to be a little more, you know, paid more attention to. Hopefully, it's a little more risky there. But I just did a house that the bathroom vents were painted shut, and the house was 10 years old, and that paint was 10 years old, and so it all suggested that for the past 10 years, it's just been, you know, not a very efficient fan for them, you know.
Ouch.
And not that it necessarily led to anything detrimental, but you know, it's all those little things, and you know, inspectors look at houses in terms of systems, and so the more you can, as a homeowner, understand that relationship between different systems and how one might impact the other, and you pop your head up into the attic periodically, you go down into your crawl space periodically, you can pick up on quite a bit just by staying aware of what the conditions are and how they change on a seasonal basis.
Yeah.
Okay. So somebody moving in from out of Montana.
Yeah.
Let's say they're moving in from somewhere that's nothing like Montana. I don't care if it's from Florida or Texas, California, wherever. What are some of the things they need to know from a home inspector's perspective when they're buying a house? Like, what are some of the things that are important for mountain living, different, you know, sub-zero degree temperatures, 100-degree plus temperatures, fire seasons, you know, the whole, like, what are some of the things that you see that people who come in from out of town typically say, oh, I wasn't aware of that, or, oh, we have to be aware of that? You know?
Radon's a big one. There are a lot of areas of the country where radon just isn't, it seems they're moving over and they've never even heard of it, you know. And you get you get a pretty wide array of opinions about radon. I mean, there's literally radon mines that people go to for the health benefits, you know, and they'll sit in it. But then you get people who, you know, are more in line with the EPA's belief that it causes, you know, is a cancer risk for long-term exposure, and so they're very concerned about it. But the fact that western Montana is somewhat of a geological hotspot for radon, and I think the average in Missoula County is over 6.
Okay. And the threshold is 4.
4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. According to the EPA, is 4.
And there's solutions. So you come in and let's say you find a house and it's registered, or it's registering at 6.
Yep.
What's the next step?
Yeah. So it's you know, you're getting in touch with a mitigation contractor or a radon contractor, and depending on the type of construction that your house is, whether it's a crawl space or a slab on grade or a basement with a concrete slab, there are different methodologies in how to approach it. But essentially what you're doing is you're installing a system that is going to create a pressure underneath the house that is going to capture all of the soil gases that are either underneath your slab or underneath the vapor barrier in your crawl space, and pump those out and above your roof line and into the atmosphere where it can dissipate. Because radon is everywhere, but the issue becomes when it gets in high concentrations in our homes.
When it gets trapped.
When it gets trapped,
Yeah, okay.
exactly. So when it's allowed to just dissipate in the atmosphere, I mean, we're all exposed to that.
Right.
But when it gets trapped and you know, builds up in a basement or in a lower level of a house, that's when it becomes a health concern.
So, worst case scenario, like cost-wise, what do we?
I've heard a lot of systems land in that like $1,500 to $2,500 range around here, and so in the
far from a deal breaker.
in the scope of a real estate transaction, it's nominal. I mean, it usually, from what I've seen, gets, you know, it gets listed as a health and safety concern, and so, you know, 9 times out of 10, that just is a pretty easy add-on in negotiations, and it gets taken care of one way or another.
Right.
So it's relatively inexpensive. Most systems are pretty seamless in terms of the process of installation. So yeah, I rarely find that that's a major hiccup, but you just get some clients who are more or less concerned about it. But so people coming from out of state, they may or may not be familiar with radon to begin with, and then if they are, they still might not be aware that western Montana has pretty high levels. So, other things out of state I think about would be, you know, we're not a humid climate, but we can still have mold issues. So I think there's a lot of people who come from the Floridas, you know, the other more humid states, and they just kind of are so relieved that they're not going to have these major, you know, mold issues, and we of course still see them all the time. It's just the mechanism of how they arrive might be a little bit different than in a more humid climate. And then a relief for some people is the lack of termites, you know? And so we get a lot of people from different parts of the country who are like, how'd the termite inspection go? And it's like, well, okay, number one, I'm not, you know, a certified termite inspector, but here's why I'm not, because, you know, our climate is simply too cold. And I think there's been very rare circumstances of termites being found having an impact on buildings in certain areas of Montana, but it's such a low risk around here that we simply aren't. It's not very high on our list of things to be watching out for.
And it's not hard to see when you come across it.
And
it's not that you're not looking for it.
Of course,
right.
yeah.
You know, there's signs, but you know, they're not invisible to somebody who's paying attention.
Exactly. And if somebody who's getting in all the hard to reach places, like, you know, we'll be able to find what's going on if there's evidence of that. But, you know, more than termites, you know, what we get are, other types of wood destroying insects. You get the carpenter ants, or different types of pest infestation that tend to take place. And then to your point about wildfire protection, that's another, depending on where your house is located, that can be another really critical thing that we look at as inspectors. We're not arborists, but we do educate our clients about defensible space around houses. And one of the major causes of structure loss during wildfires are the debris building up in gutters, or the pine needles building up in the valleys of roofs, building up under decks and whatnot, that kind of act as that ignition source. And so somebody coming in from out of state and they're in a more wooded area, a little bit more vulnerable to wildfire, I think it's very relevant for us to be educating our clients about when the possible risks and how to manage things, and why your wood pile shouldn't be right up against the siding. And
Your extra 5 gallons of gas for the mower.
And why your trees need to be trimmed around the flue for your wood burning stove, and just those types of things that if you're less familiar with a more rural Montana lifestyle, then you got to be educated on that going in.
I think we even, from a home insurance standpoint too, we're getting a lot of pushback with insurance companies being more strict on wanting to quote policies for houses because of fire danger, or even like you said, if they got gas cans or anything stacked up on the side of the roof or side of the building, and what the roof condition looks like. A lot of times they won't insure you, or they'll insure you and then do an inspection after. But that's part of your guys' services. Hopefully you can identify some of the weak points of the property, and then we can go in and negotiate that on their behalf.
Yeah, if you're in the middle of the woods and you got a wood shake roof, it's like, but probably, I wouldn't be surprised if insurance had something to say about that, And so, the more you can anticipate those issues, and the more we can educate our clients on those issues as inspectors, the better off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. All right, well, we appreciate you coming the second time.
Yeah.
I hope to have you back a third. We really appreciate you taking the time to come in and just kind of help our clients, viewers, people understand the importance of a home inspection, and that it should be collaborative. It should, like, me as an agent, Chad as an agent, you as a home inspector, the buyer or the seller, we should be looking at how to manage the information that you're able to find. We welcome, probably because of my background in home inspection, but I know not every real estate agent loves a home inspector, but I do. I enjoy going through the home inspections to see what they found, and being able to talk with our clients. But no, we really do appreciate it. I know that you're a busy person, and you got stuff to do right after this.
Sure.
But thanks again, and maybe tell everybody how they can get in touch with you and or Inspect Montana. And I don't know if you know off the top of your head all the services you provide, but maybe just kind of run through those real quick.
Sure. Yeah. So we, provide residential and commercial inspections, but we also offer project consultations. So we're unique in the sense that we have several inspectors who are ICC code certified across all trades, me included as one of them. So as part of those project consultation services, we can do phase inspections, as a home is being built, and we can inspect it to the same standard that, a municipality would be inspecting it to, because we hold all of the same certifications that a municipal inspector does. And then we are certified in commercial properties, which, if you don't already know, is definitely a separate certification that you need. You don't want to just call your favorite home inspector and have them do a commercial building, because it's a different beast in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But then, yeah, through our sister company, Safe Home, we offer pretty much every environmental service under the sun. And in doing so, we kind of created more competition for ourselves in a way too, because if any inspector can utilize Safe Home services, so that's not only isolated to us, but methamphetamine testing, radon testing, water quality testing, asbestos, lead-based paint. I mean, any of the typical ones that you can think of, we offer. And then our inspectors are also certified in sewer scopes and well pump flow tests as well.
Oh, wonderful.
We'll do well tests as
Nice.
well. So really an aim to be a one-stop shop, and I think we've largely accomplished that up to this point. But we can be found pretty much anywhere online. If you search in Inspect Montana on your favorite social media platform, we're probably on it to one degree or another.
Nice.
But then our website is inspectmt, as in Montana.com. And yeah, everything we do from a marketing standpoint on social media and our website is really an attempt to be an extension of our services, similar to what you guys are doing with this podcast. We have a podcast of our own called The Inspection Report that you can find on Spotify and Apple Music and all the different spots on YouTube as well.
Nice.
But we're really just, we believe that a more educated agent and a more educated client, even before we ever work with them, is just a better situation for everybody involved. And so even if you never utilize our services, we think that people get quite a bit of value and sometimes entertainment from keeping up on our stuff on social media and our podcasts and whatnot. So it's really an attempt to just consistently bring value to people, even if we never get the pleasure of working with each other.
Yeah, definitely. That's appreciated.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me. This podcast is a very generous offering to your audience, and so your clients are lucky to have you. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah. So,
Appreciate it.
Chad Sanderson, Roger Hammond with Valley 5 Real Estate in Missoula. Look us up, valley5.com or 406-540-5555. Hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.